Hello guys, today we'll be doing some basic multiplication. Pokemon is full of multipliers and understanding them is important for battling and team building. How multiplication works is, of course, a mathematical property that's universal, but what I'm focusing on today is telling you which things in Pokemon are multipliers, which are not, and we're going to address some misconceptions related to multipliers. This may sound silly, but I predict that you'll have made at least one of the misconceptions I'll go over in this video. I've even seen top-level players misunderstand multipliers and how they affect the game. Also, for background footage, I'm using a Rain Trick Room team in Natdex Ubers. Dracovish is something of a poster child for multipliers in competitive Pokemon thanks to its unbelievably powerful Fishious Rend. Also, the result when multiplying two numbers is called a product. Just a reminder in case any of you forgot or English isn't your first language. Anyway, let's get right into it. As I said, Pokemon is full of multipliers on many different levels. Going over all of them would be a waste of time, but I'll mention some of the most prominent multipliers in competitive play here. 1.1 times multipliers includes Wise Glasses, Muscle Band, and Natures. For example, a Pokemon with an Adamant nature will get a 10% power boost on physical attacks. This is why combining EVs, which are not multipliers, but rather added stat points, with nature is so powerful. If nature simply added a fixed number of points to a stat, then it wouldn't matter as much where EVs go, but because natures are a multiplier, you almost always see a boosting nature paired with EV investment. 1.2 times multipliers include all type boosting items such as the Arceus plates. 1.3 times multipliers include terrains, as in grassy terrain gives grass-type attacks a 1.3 times boost, booster energy, except for speed, which is 1.5 times, life orb, and many abilities like Transistor and Tough Claws. At 1.5 times, we have Assault Vest, which gives a 1.5 times boost to special defense, the Eviolite, which boosts defense and special defense, the choice items, Scarf, Band, and Specs, Stab, meaning same type attack boost, non-stab Terra, a critical hit, boosts to water and fire moves from Rain and Sun respectively, and abilities like Dragon Fang, Guerrilla Tactics, and Strongjaw. At 2 times, there's a super effective attack, Stab with adaptability, Stab with Terra, and abilities Huge Power and Pure Power. At 4 times, that's double super effective, or 4 times super effective as it's more commonly known, and 4 times is also the maximum multiplier that can be applied to a stat, as in if a Pokemon has the maximum plus 6 stages of boost in attack, its attack will be its base attack multiplied by 4. Now, something that I've seen a lot of people get wrong is how these multipliers interact. As the name would imply, they multiply. Let's use Regieleki as an example. Its Transistor boosts electric-type attacks by 1.3 times. Regieleki also gets a stab boost on top of this ability, and that stab boost is 1.5 times. So, how much stronger are Regieleki's electric moves than if it was, say, a normal type and had the ability Pickup? If you think it's 1.8 times, you are incorrect. It's actually 1.5 times 1.3, which is 1.95. Meaning Transistor is essentially a slightly worse adaptability. Suppose we add a choice specs to this calculation, which boosts special attack by 1.5 times. Now Regieleki would be stronger by 1.5 times 1.3 times 1.5, which is 2.925. If you were to incorrectly add multipliers, you would think that it was only 2.3 times stronger. This can be a bit strange when you talk about stat boosting moves. Suppose a Dragonite is using Dragon Dance. The first Dragon Dance boosts attack and speed by 1 stage, which is a 1.5 times multiplier. The next boost, though, is not a 1.5 times multiplier. If you use Dragon Dance again, your attack is now at +2, which is a 2 times multiplier. If every boost was as impactful as the first boost, which is 1.5 times, then setup would be a lot better. 1.5 times 1.5 is 2.25, which is significantly more than 2, and after 3 Dragon Dances, it would be a 3.375 times multiplier instead of the 2.5 times that it actually is. The important thing to note here is that although stat boosts are multipliers, they are increasingly less impactful multipliers. If you want to think of them in terms of stacking multipliers, then the first Dragon Dance is a 1.5 times multiplier, the second Dragon Dance is a 1.333 times multiplier, and the third Dragon Dance is a 1.25 times multiplier. The more boosts you get, the smaller percentage of a boost you get. This is partly why stat boosting sweepers typically only set up once or twice before they start attacking. It's not worth taking the damage to get increasingly insignificant power boosts, and they'd get more out of their sweep if they started attacking sooner. Basically everything that boosts power in Pokemon is a multiplier, with the notable exception of EVs and IVs, which are added at a flat rate before multipliers are applied. Specifically at level 100, 4 EVs will lead to a 1-point increase in a stat. This difference between additive and multiplicative factors can be best shown when looking at Azumarill. Azumarill has base 50 attack, which is pretty awful, and yet it's considered a very powerful physical attacker. This is thanks to its ability Huge Power, which doubles attack. But 100 base attack still isn't very good. What really makes Azumarill powerful is that Huge Power, a multiplier, doubles the EV investment of Azumarill, which, as I said, is additive, not multiplicative. To give you an idea of how impactful this is, Azumarill, a Pokemon with base 50 attack and Huge Power, is equivalent to Azumarill without Huge Power but a base 149 attack. This concept can also be applied to moves. Victini's V-Create is 180 base power, and it has an attack stat of 100. To calculate the power of a Victini using V-Create, you basically multiply the attack stat by the base power of the move. But remember, EV investment is additive and applied to the attack stat. And for multiplication, increasing the lower number leads to a more significant increase in the product. Therefore, when EV investment is considered, Victini's V-Create is much stronger as it currently is than if Victini were granted 180 base attack and the power of V-Create was lowered to 100. Now, that would make Victini's other attacks super strong as well, so this would definitely be a win for Victini overall, but that's not the point of this exercise. Okay, now let's look at the defensive side. The full equation for how much damage a Pokemon takes is this beautiful thing right here, but you don't need to know that equation to understand defenses. All you need to know is that to find how bulky a Pokemon is, you multiply their HP with the relevant defense stat. If you want to know how physically bulky a Pokemon is, that's HP times physical defense, and if you want to know how specially bulky a Pokemon is, that's HP times special defense. That's why bulky Pokemon almost always invest in HP. It's involved in 2 calculations, whereas each defense stat is only involved in 1. There are exceptions though, thanks to the multiplicative nature of bulk. Blissey, for example, has much higher HP than defense or special defense. And, as I said, when multiplying 2 numbers to reach a larger number, it's better to increase the smaller number. The most popular Blissey set runs max defense EVs, max special defense EVs, 4 HP, and a plus special defense nature. To calculate the physical bulk, we multiply HP and defense and get a value of about 77,000. For special bulk, we get around 264,000. Now, let's look at some less popular Blissey sets and compare them. Starting with max HP and physical defense. This gets a 9.5% increase in physical defense compared to the first set we talked about, but a 9.7% drop in special defense. So although it's slight, you're less bulky overall. Now a truly unpopular Blissey set, max HP and max special defense, this has a 9.5% increase in special defense, but a devastating 52.9% drop in physical defense, meaning you'll take about twice as much from physical attacks. Now, I should mention here as a disclaimer that bulk calculation is slightly more nuanced than I've explained it to be. If you actually look at a damage calculator, the difference in physical bulk between the most and least popular Blissey sets on the defensive side is actually slightly less than 50%. But you don't need to understand all that's going on in the background. Simply multiplying the HP stat and that of the relevant defense is a very good approximation, and if you ever need to get really specific, you can just use a calculator, which I'll link in the description. So, the lesson here is, invest in HP almost all the time on a defensive Pokemon, since it's part of 2 bulk calculations instead of 1, but if a Pokemon has a very high HP stat like Blissey or Alomomola, usually it's best to invest in both defenses instead. And remember that the reason for doing this is because EVs and IVs are not multiplicative. They're additive, and are added before the multipliers are applied. Now I want to use this principle to correct a common misconception, how the Assault Vest works. The Assault Vest is a multiplier, which increases special defense by 1.5 times. And remember, as I said earlier, special bulk is calculated by multiplying HP and special defense. I've heard that a Pokemon isn't a good Assault Vest user unless it has high special defense. I've also heard that the best Assault Vest users have low special defense and high HP, because the concept we discussed earlier, that when multiplying 2 numbers, the sum is maximized by increasing the lower number rather than the higher number. These are both incorrect. The second misconception would be true if the Assault Vest was additive, like EVs and IVs, but it's not. It's a multiplier. I see people using funky EVs all the time when equipping an Assault Vest. Usually they invest a ton of EVs into special bulk, thinking that it'll be more impactful since it has an Assault Vest, and this is totally wrong. Let's use Toxapex as an example. Toxapex has base 50 HP and base 142 special defense. Suppose you're running a modest Assault Vest Toxapex with Sludge Bomb, Ice Beam, Surf, and, say, Terra Blast. You want max special attack investment for the sake of power, but you still have 256 EVs left. Where do you put them? The correct answer is all in HP. HP is involved in 2 calculations instead of 1, and furthermore, Toxapex's HP is pretty terrible, and as we said, adding to the lower number here, HP, will increase the product far more than adding to either of the higher numbers, defense and special defense. But don't you want to invest some in special defense? All EVs you put in special defense will be worth 1.5 times as much, right? Since you have the Assault Vest? No. Wrong. The reason is the commutative property, which simply states that B times A equals A times B. Essentially, the order of multiplying doesn't matter. HP multiplied by special defense times 1.5 is the same as 1.5 times HP times special defense. If you want, you can even think of the Assault Vest as dividing your opponent's special attack by 1.5 and taking it out of the equation of your Pokemon's defense altogether. The effect is the same. Well, I hope you learned something. Now, before I end the video, just for fun, let's calculate the power of Dracovish's Vicious Rend in this video, assuming it got a critical hit. That's 85 base power, times 2 for moving first, times 1.5 per stab, times 1.5 for rain, times 1.5 for strong jaw, times 1.5 for choice band, times 1.333 times for terra, times 1.5 times for a critical hit. Ultimately, that gives us a power of 1,721. Also, fun fact, this is a guaranteed one-hit KO on max physical defense Dondozo. And if you don't want this Dracovish to show up at your door, I highly recommend you subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Let me know in the comments if you learned something or if you have something to add. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.